Public for their great music. Let me thank Aaron Bridges for his remarks. Richard Becker for his union organizing work. Robert Robertus Bell for the great work that he is doing. And let me thank your great member of the United States Congress, John Yarmouth, for all that he does. John and I have worked together on many issues, and you're lucky to have such a great congressman. And let me thank all of you, not only for being here today, but for the support you gave me during the last campaign. You know, in 2016, we were not expected to do well in Kentucky. Turns out that we came within a few votes of winning, and I'm very grateful for your support. And this time around, we're not going to come within a few votes of winning. We're going to win. And not only are we going to win here in Kentucky, we're going to win the Democratic nomination, and we're going to defeat Donald Trump. But the reason I am here in Louisville today is not just to ask for your political support. I am here as a United States Senator to ask Mitch McConnell, the majority leader in the U.S. Senate, to do the right thing. And that is to stop using his office to simply represent the wealthy and the powerful and billionaire campaign contributors, but to start representing the working families of Kentucky and the United States. And here is the simple truth. At a time of massive income and wealth inequality, when 3 people now own more wealth than the bottom half of America, when the top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 92%, when large corporations are earning record-breaking profits, and CEOs make 300 times more than their workers, it is not the billionaire class that needs help today. It is the working class of this country. So Senator McConnell, take a look around you, take a look at Kentucky, take a look at America, and tell your wealthy campaign contributors that enough is enough. They can't have it all. Today, in Kentucky, in Vermont, and throughout our country, half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. And I come from a family and grew up in a household that lived paycheck to paycheck, and I know a little bit about that. And that means that if you get sick or a family member ends up in the hospital, you're worried about how you're going to pay that bill. And if your car breaks down and you can't get to work, and get a paycheck, you can't get a paycheck and feed your family. That's living paycheck to paycheck. And today in America, we got 87 million people who either have no health insurance at all or who are underinsured. And we got millions of people in Kentucky, Vermont, and around this country who cannot afford the prescription drugs they need to stay alive or to ease their pain. Here in Kentucky and in Vermont and throughout this country, we have hundreds of thousands of bright young people who cannot afford to go to college or are leaving school deeply in debt. And tonight we're going to have 500,000 Americans sleeping out on the streets. So today here in Louisville, I say to Senator McConnell, stop worrying about your billionaire friends. They're doing just fine. And start worrying about the working families of your state and around this country who are struggling to keep their heads above water. Today, I say here in Kentucky to Senator McConnell, stop blocking legislation from coming to the floor of the Senate. Now, if you want to, Senator McConnell, you can vote against that legislation. But we live in a democracy. The Senate is entitled to a debate, and the American people are entitled to know how you're voting. The truth is that there is no state in this country, including Vermont, where working people and low-income people are not struggling. But the crisis facing the working class of this country is especially acute right here in Kentucky, where 10 out of the 25 poorest counties in America are located. Hear that, Senator McConnell? 10 out of the 25 poorest counties in this country are located right here in your state. Stop turning your back on your constituents. Now we're talking about counties where 30 to 40% of people are living in poverty, where many thousands of residents and senior citizens are trying to get by on $10, $15, $20,000 a year. We're talking about a state here in Kentucky where over 22% of the children are living in poverty, where more than 190,000 workers are earning extremely low wages, and where over 500,000 people are trying to get by on less than $15 an hour. Senator McConnell, listen to the pain of those people. Brothers and sisters, I don't have to tell anyone here that we are living at a pivotal moment in American history. Right now, our country faces more challenges and more crises than in any time in the modern history of our country. I am talking about a growth in oligarchy. I am talking about a disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision pushed by Senator McConnell, which allows billionaires to spend huge amounts of money to buy elections. I am talking about a presidency which is moving this country toward authoritarianism. I am talking about the global crisis of climate change. I am talking about a dysfunctional healthcare system in which 30,000 Americans die every year because they don't get to a doctor on time. I am talking about a broken criminal justice system, a broken immigration system. I'm talking about millions of senior citizens who are unable to retire with dignity. I'm talking about a housing crisis, an education crisis, a rigged tax system, I'm talking about the need for women to control their own bodies. I am talking about the need for gun safety legislation. And I am talking about legislation to protect the integrity of our elections. And those are just some of the issues out there that the American people are crying out to have resolved, to have discussed, to have debated, to have voted upon. But instead of taking action to address any of these crises, Mitch McConnell is obstructing, and obstructing. He is refusing to allow a vote on any of the bills that have been introduced in the Senate or passed already in the House to address these crises. So today, we are here to say as loudly as we can and as clearly as we can to Mitch McConnell, enough is enough. Stop the obstruction. Stop blocking the Senate from taking action to raise the minimum wage, to stop gun violence in America, to improve the integrity of our elections, to protect the pensions of workers in Kentucky and throughout America, to guarantee health care as a human right, not a privilege, to combat climate change, and to stop once and for all billionaires from buying elections. So today I say to Senator McConnell, if you want to vote against any of that legislation, that's fine. You have the right to come back to Kentucky and tell the people why you voted the way you did. But you don't have the right to stop democracy in the United States Senate. You don't have the right to prevent debate and votes on the most important issues facing the working people of this country. Stop your cowardice. Have the guts to debate the issues. And let me just touch briefly on some of those issues. In the richest country in the history of the world, it is not acceptable that millions of workers from one end of America to the other are forced to work 2 or 3 jobs just to put food on the table and pay the bills. It is not a radical idea to say that in America, if you work 40 hours a week, you should not live in poverty. A job should lift Americans out of poverty, not keep them in poverty. And let me be as clear as I can be. The $7.25 an hour federal minimum wage is a starvation wage. Nobody, not in Kentucky, not in Vermont, not anywhere, nobody can make it on $7.25, $8, $9, $10 an hour. We must raise that minimum wage, which has not been raised in 10 years, to a living wage at least $15 an hour. And we must make it easier for workers to join unions. Now, the good news is that over the last several years, 7 states in America have voted to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And over a month ago, the House of Representatives passed legislation that I authored to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. So that's where we are right now. The U.S. House has done the right thing, and millions of American workers are waiting for the Senate to do the right thing. But Senator McConnell has refused to bring that bill up on the Senate floor. So I say to Senator McConnell, have the courage to stand with the working people of Kentucky and America, not your wealthy campaign contributors. Allow that $15 an hour minimum wage bill to get to the floor of the Senate. If you, Senator McConnell, want to vote against that bill, that's fine. That's your business. But then you're going to have to come home and explain to over 500,000 workers here in Kentucky who are making less than $15 an hour why they do not deserve an average raise of $4,300 a year. But you come home, come back here to Louisville and Kentucky and explain to the working people of this country why you support tax breaks for billionaires, but you don't want to raise that minimum wage to a living wage. So I say to Senator McConnell, it is time to end your obstruction. It is time for the Senate to vote. Well, let's be clear. $15 an hour minimum wage is not the only bill that Senator McConnell is blocking. Last month, very importantly, the House passed legislation to prevent companies from cutting the earned pension benefits of 1.5 million American workers and retirees in multi-employer pension plans. Now, these are people who had worked their whole lives. These are people who have given up wage increases in order to get a decent pension. And that includes more than 24,000 coal miners and Teamsters right here in Kentucky who are looking at their pensions of being cut by up to 60%. If Senator McConnell wants to explain to the coal miners and truck drivers in Kentucky why he is opposed to legislation that would protect their pensions, that is his prerogative. But he should stop blocking legislation that I want to vote for, that other senators want to vote for, that would restore those pensions. Senator McConnell, it is time for you to end your obstruction. It is time for the Senate to do its job and vote. And when we talk about the need for the Senate to take action, we are talking about the need for Senator McConnell to stop blocking common sense gun safety legislation. It has now been 3 weeks since the horrific mass shootings in El Paso and Dayton, which have followed, as all of you know, mass shootings over the years in community after community after community. The American people, gun owners and non-gun owners, overwhelmingly want action. They want us to do everything we can to stop these mass murders. They want to see background checks expanded. They want to see the gun show loophole and the so-called straw man provision eliminated. And more Americans understand that the function of military-style assault weapons is to kill as many people as possible, and more Americans want to end the sale and distribution of those assault weapons. So I say to Senator McConnell, listen to what the American people want and not allow the NRA to dictate gun policy in this country. End your obstructionism on gun safety legislation. Let us have that debate. Let us vote. And when we talk about the need for the Senate Act, we are also talking about the need to prevent Russia and other countries from interfering in our elections, and the need to protect the integrity of American elections. Now, you may want to vote Democrat, you may want to vote Republican. I hope you want to vote Democrat. But most of all, you want to make sure that your vote is properly counted, that our election system is not hacked by Russia or any other country or entity, and that the heart and soul of American democracy, free and fair elections, remains intact. The good news is that the House passed legislation to update our voting equipment to produce paper voting records and keep voting machines disconnected from the internet. But for whatever reason, Senator McConnell has blocked that legislation from getting a vote in the Senate. And once again, I say to Senator McConnell, if you want to vote against that legislation, you can vote against it. But I cannot understand why you believe that we should do nothing to stop Russia and other countries from interfering with our elections. Senator McConnell, stop the obstructionism. Allow us to vote on maintaining the integrity of American elections. Brothers and sisters, when we talk about our responsibilities as human beings, as parents and as grandparents, there is nothing more important than leaving this country and the entire planet healthy and habitable for our kids, our grandchildren, and future generations. Scientists, and some of us, unlike the president, actually believe in science. Scientific community, not only in America, but throughout the world, have told us that we have fewer than 12 years to act boldly in transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energies. And that if we do not act boldly, our country and our planet will face irreparable harm from a moral perspective. With the love that we feel in our hearts for our kids and our grandchildren, we must not allow that to happen. Future generations deserve a planet that is healthy and is habitable, and we have the moral responsibility to make sure that they have that kind of planet. But if we do not get our act together, and I don't mean just the United States, I'm talking about countries all over the world. If we do not get our act together and act boldly, there will be more drought, more famine, more flooding, more rising sea levels, more wildfires, more extreme weather disturbances, more disease, more human suffering. Now, I am more than aware that there are a lot of workers in Kentucky who have relied on coal mining jobs to support their families. So let me be as clear as I can be. Coal miners, and I speak as probably the most pro-worker member of the United States Senate, coal miners are not my enemy. Workers in the fossil fuel industry are not my enemy. Climate change is our enemy. I understand that workers in the fossil fuel industry, like all workers, are doing everything they can to feed their families and to take care of their basic needs. For decades, coal miners have seen their pensions cut. They have seen their health care benefits slashed. They have seen their jobs disappear. They have developed black lung disease, and they have seen their communities destroyed by CEOs who don't give a damn about anything except their short-term profits. The reality is that Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump have abandoned these communities. Well, let me be clear. Unlike McConnell and unlike Trump, I am not going to turn my backs on communities in this country who are hurting. We are going to rebuild rural America, and in the process, we're going to create millions of good-paying jobs. And let me say this. Today, we stand with the coal miners in Harlan County who aren't receiving a paycheck. And we ask Mitch McConnell to demand that these workers get paid as soon as possible. But let me be also as clear as I can be in saying here in Kentucky what I said the other day in Paradise, California, which some of you remember suffered that horrendous fire which killed 86 people, and what I have said in Vermont and what I have said all over this country. And that is, climate change is real. Climate change is caused by human activity. And climate change is causing devastating harm in our country and throughout the world. And I agree with those scientists who tell us that we have a short period of time to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. But here is my promise. As we transition away from fossil fuel, we will not abandon communities that have relied on fossil fuel jobs. We will rebuild those communities. We will create millions of jobs modernizing our electricity grid and building the wind, solar, and other sustainable energies that our country and the world desperately need. We will expand high-speed internet and broadband services to every community in America. And we will guarantee the right of all workers to form unions without threats or intimidation from corporate CEOs. As some of you may know, I have introduced sweeping climate change legislation. Others have introduced different ideas. But the bottom line is, for the sake of the future of our country and our planet, we have got to act, and act now. So I say to Mitch McConnell, stop your obstructionism, bring climate change legislation to the floor of the Senate. Let's have that debate. Let's have that vote. Let us save the planet. Now, I think the question that a lot of people are asking is, why does Senator McConnell do what he does? Why does he oppose virtually every piece of legislation that protects working families while supporting legislation that gives huge tax breaks to billionaires? And why does he come forward and say that we should cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and education? And the answer is not complicated. It has everything to do with following the money. Follow the money. Over the course of his long career, Senator McConnell has received huge amounts of campaign contributions from Wall Street companies like Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase, and hedge funds. He has received huge amounts of contributions from the healthcare industry, including companies like Blue Cross Blue Shield, Humana, Eli Lilly. He's received a lot of money in campaign contributions from the fossil fuel industry and, of course, the NRA. And what do these incredibly powerful corporations and special interests oppose? What is their agenda? Well, they oppose raising the minimum wage. They oppose guaranteeing health care to all Americans as a human right through a Medicare for all single-payer program. They oppose taking any action that would lower the outrageous cost of prescription drugs in this country. They oppose any legislation to combat climate change. And of course, the NRA opposes any gun safety legislation. Now, that is what Senator McConnell's campaign contributors oppose. Let me tell you what they support. They support huge tax breaks for the billionaire class and large corporations. And we should be clear that Senator McConnell has delivered for them. They support deregulating Wall Street, and Senator McConnell has delivered for them. They support cutting Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And here is the irony. On one hand, everything the American people want is what McConnell's campaign contributors and McConnell himself oppose. And what the American people oppose is what McConnell and his campaign contributors want. So I got a radical idea. Senator McConnell, why don't you listen to the people of Kentucky and America, not just the billionaires? And that's what the whole thing is about. It's not complicated. On one hand, you got a struggling working class in this country who are fighting for decent paying jobs. They're fighting for health care. They're fighting for education. They're fighting for a clean environment. And on the other hand, you got a handful of billionaires who contribute huge amounts of money to McConnell and the Republican Party, who stand in opposition to everything the working families of this country want. So brothers and sisters, we got a lot of work in front of us. But mostly what we have got to do is to do exactly the opposite of what Trump and McConnell are trying to do. They are trying to divide us up based on the color of our skin, based on where we were born, based on our religion, based on our sexual orientation, and based on our gender. That's what they want to do. They want to divide us up and allow the wealthy and the powerful to buy elections and to have Republican governors suppress the vote. That's their idea of democracy. Well, our idea is just a little bit different. Our idea is that we're going to bring working people together, black and white and Latino, Asian American, Native American, gay and straight, immigrant and native born. We're going to come together. And we're going to say to Mitch McConnell, Donald Trump, and the entire corporate elite that control the economic and political life of this country that their day has come and it is gone. We're tired of our kids not being able to go to college. And that is why we are going not only to make public colleges and universities tuition free, we're going to cancel all student debt. Now, Mitch McConnell will tell you that that's an expensive proposition. And he's right. But it is an expensive proposition, Mitch, to bail out the crooks on Wall Street, which you voted for. It is an expensive proposition to give over $1 trillion in tax breaks to the 1% in large profitable corporations. It is an expensive proposition, Senator McConnell, to allow for a tax system that enables Amazon to make $10 billion in profits last year and not pay a nickel in federal income tax. So what we are going to do is we make public colleges and universities tuition free and cancel student debt. We pay for that through a modest tax on Wall Street speculation. Now, Trump and McConnell, they tried and lost by one vote to throw 32 million Americans off the health care that they have. Here in Kentucky, the Affordable Care Act is a lifeline for hundreds of thousands of people in your state. And McConnell and Trump want to end it, throw 32 million people off the health care they have. Well, we say to Senator McConnell, we are going to do what every other major country on earth does. We guarantee health care to all people through a Medicare for all single-payer program. And by the way, Mitch, instead of giving tax breaks to your billionaire friends, we are finally going to create a tax system that forces them to start paying their fair share of taxes. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world. We can, if we stand together, provide a good standard of living for all of our people, our children, through universal, high-quality child care, through a strong public education system, which pays teachers in America a minimum of $60,000 a year. Instead of ignoring climate change, we will lead the world in transforming the global energy system and create millions of good-paying jobs in this country. Mitch McConnell pushed very hard for this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decisions. Well, guess what, Mitch? We're going to overturn that disastrous decision. So, brothers and sisters, let us go forward together, and let us demand that Mitch McConnell have the guts, have the courage to at least put legislation on the floor of the Senate that will improve life for the working families of this country. Senator McConnell, end the obstructionism. Let us have democracy in the Senate. Let us address the needs of the working class of this country. Thank you all very much.